Revealed. Maid's daughter's heartwarming warning to CEO that changed everything forever. In a small diner tucked away in a bustling suburban town, the clinking of silverware and the sizzle of burgers filled the air. The neon sign flickered outside, casting a warm glow that enveloped 17-year-old Sarah as she wiped down tables, her thoughts racing with dreams larger than the confines of her reality. But reality weighed heavy. Every shift her mother worked as a maid brought in just enough to keep their modest lives afloat, and Sarah longed to break that cycle. As she served another plate of fries, she spotted him across the room, Jason, the affluent CEO of a tech company, all sharp suits and polished shoes. His world and hers were galaxies apart, yet sparks of fate were about to collide. Their unlikely friendship formed over late-night conversations at the diner, where greasy fries fueled their honesty. Jason listened as Sarah shared stories of sleepless nights, watching her mother labor tirelessly, dreams fading into shadows. "You don't understand," she confessed one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every layoff isn't just a number. It's a family being torn apart." Tears glistened in her eyes as she painted a picture of sleepless nights and quiet desperation. In that diner, surrounded by strangers, Sarah made Jason feel something he never encountered in his high-stakes world, a sense of purpose mingled with guilt. Then one day, the atmosphere shifted. Jason returned to the diner with a grim look on his face, the weight of his company's demands pressing down on his shoulders. "We might have to make cuts," he stammered, barely meeting her gaze. Each word was a dagger to Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. Pressure from investors hung over him like a storm cloud, threatening their jobs, her mother's fragile security looming in the balance. "Seriously?" Sarah's voice shattered the diner's normal hum, a mixture of disbelief and anger. Heads turned. The silence was palpable. "You're talking about lives, Jason? Families? People who bleed like you and me." Her hands trembled as the weight of her emotions burst free. The diner's patrons held their breath, witnessing the clash of two worlds, the privileged and the struggling. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Jason's mind raced as a wave of guilt washed over him. He understood her point, but felt trapped, drowning in a sea of expectations. "I didn't ask for this," he protested, the tremor in his voice revealing the torment of his privilege. But her relentless spirit ignited something deep inside him. "Then let us change it," Sarah shot back. "Let us rally the community. They need hope. They need voices." With emotions raging and the diner buzzing with whispers, they realized the divide could only be bridged if they fought together. As they huddled closer under the fluorescent lights, hope shimmered through their shared determination. They were no longer just a Maid's daughter and a CEO. They were allies against an unforgiving system, determined to challenge what lay ahead. Would their voices be strong enough to echo through the corridors of power? As Sarah's heart raced with anticipation, her mother's words echoed in her mind. This fight was for them all. The diner buzzed with tension, leaving readers wondering if they could truly change everything, or if the weight of privilege would tear them apart. The neon glow of the diner seemed to pulse in rhythm with Sarah's racing heart. Clenching her fists, she exchanged a steady glance with Jason, a silent promise passing between them. They'd take on the world, or at least their little corner of it. But how? As the chatter resumed, Sarah took a deep breath. "We need a plan," she said, her voice firm. Jason nodded, a spark igniting in his eyes. "A plan to inform the community. They need to know what's at stake." It felt surreal. One moment, they were just a waitress and a CEO world apart. Now, they were comrades, ready to rouse the voices silenced by fear and oppression. Together, They spent the rest of the night scribbling ideas on napkins, brainstorming ways to reach those who worked just as hard as Sarah's mother. Jason suggested organizing a meeting, a town hall of sorts, but in the diner where it all began. It was bold and risky, but they were fueled by the urgency of their cause. In the weeks that followed, the diner transformed into a bustling hub of ideas and conversations. Flyers plastered the walls, and word spread through whispers from table to table. Sarah's mother watched on with a mixture of pride and anxiety, torn between worry for her daughter's safety and admiration for her strength. The diner, once a simple gathering place for meals, buzzed with energy as people began to rally. The night of the meeting arrived. The diner was packed, each table filled with faces both familiar and new. Jason stood up at the front, his usual confident demeanor replaced with a nervous energy. He cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know many of you work tirelessly to make ends meet. We're here to talk about something profound changes at the company that will affect our lives." Sarah could see the apprehension in the crowd, but she felt Jason's gaze strengthen her own resolve. She stepped forward, her voice steady. "This isn't just about layoffs. It's about our community and our right to a voice. We can't let decisions made in boardrooms ruin lives. We can be heard if we stand together." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. A man at the back spoke up, his voice rising above the rest. "But what can we really do? They're powerful. They don't listen to people like us." Jason's heart sank at his words, but Sarah took it as a challenge. "That's exactly the problem. They think we won the fight. But we're here, together. We're stronger than their numbers." Nervous laughter mixed with the tension, injecting a moment of ease into the seriousness of it all. As the conversations deepened, ideas turned into plans. A march, petitions, a social media campaign. Each voice added weight to their cause. They shared personal stories, revealing not just statistics, but the truth behind each life impacted by layoffs. Sarah found strength in each shared narrative, and soon, she discovered her own voice echoing in the hopes and fears of those around her. But just as momentum built, a shadow fell over them. A familiar face entered the diner, a company board member, his presence cutting through the camaraderie like an unwelcome chill. Everyone fell silent, eyes wide as they turned to Jason, whose expression faltered. Sarah's heart pounded. What would this mean for their efforts? The board member scanned the room, a sly grin creeping onto his face. Well, it seems the maids and the CEOs are banding together. How quaint. Jason straightened, a fierce determination returning to his features. This isn't quaint. It's powerful, and we're only getting started. Sarah felt a surge of strength, knowing this confrontation could define their fight. As eyes locked, tension thickened in the air, leaving them all wondering would they stand strong against the looming power of privilege, or would despair shake their resolve. The board member's smirk only deepened. His words dripped with condescension, and Sarah's stomach churned. She wanted to shout back, to unleash the frustration that had been building ever since they started planning their resistance. But she held back, sensing the weight of the moment. The eyes of the community were upon them, and it was crucial not to let fear overshadow their fight. Jason stepped forward, his voice rising. "You might think this is a lost cause, but I see a room full of courage. And you might represent the power of a corporation, but we represent the heart of this town." The clattering of mugs and soft gasps surrounded them, echoing the rise of determination. "Heart, huh?" The board member's tone was mocking, yet Sarah could see the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. What good is a heart without the means to fuel it? You think marching in the streets will protect you? His laugh was a low rumble that sent chills down Sarah's spine. As he spoke, Sarah glanced around the room. Faces of her neighbors filled with hope and fear, creating a tangled web of emotion. She could see an elderly woman clutching her husband's hand, a young father with worry etched in his brow, and her mother, still behind the counter, worried yet proud. Each person mattered. Each life was tied to this battle. "Maybe you're right," Jason countered, finding his ground. Maybe a single March 1T solve everything, but it will show that we're ready to fight for what's right. We're not backing down, and we're not giving up. The tension simmered, but Sarah could feel the crowd shifting. More heads nodded in agreement, a ripple effect spreading through them. She knew they needed to channel this energy into something real. "Let us stand together," she suddenly cried out, her voice rising above the murmurs. "Let us gather our stories and our strength. Let us show them who we are." The buzz in the diner began to swell, voices rising as they rallied around Sarah's words. She felt a warmth spread through her heart as nods turned to shouts of affirmation. They were ready to make their stand. "I'll help organize another meeting bigger this time." Jason's eyes sparkled with newfound fire. "We need to gather more support. We need to reach people outside these walls." "But what if they retaliate?" someone whispered from the back. Dread seeped into the atmosphere, reminding them of the power that the board held. Anxiety tightened in the pit of Sarah's stomach. "We can't let fear control us," Jason replied, his voice firm. "We need to put our voices together as loud as we can." But even as the meeting continued to buzz with renewed purpose, a heavy doubt lingered in Sarah's mind. What if their fight led to severe consequences? Were they prepared for the backlash? As the night wore on, conversations flowed from table to table, strategies being hashed out with fervor. Yet, in a crowd that seemed so energized, a quiet darkness loomed for Sarah. She had to face not just the fight outside, but the shadows of her own uncertainty. Just when it seemed they could plan their march, the board member spoke again, his eyes scanning the room with thinly veiled menace. "You think being united will protect you? Just remember, there are ways to silence a crowd." A chill washed over the diner, and Sarah felt a knot in her throat. It wouldn't just be a fight for their voices. It would be a fight for their very existence. Coming together had never been as perilous in that quiet moment. Both Sarah and Jason understood the true weight of their choice. They were in it now. There was no backing down. But the risk was dangerous, and they did need to prepare for whatever the board would throw at them next. As they locked eyes, a familiar flicker of determination danced between them. Maybe this was the spark they needed. But would it be enough, or would it only ignite a firestorm? And in that uncertainty, Sarah realized something crucial: they needed to know their enemy well. Would the fight for their community end in triumph? Or were they stepping into a battle far beyond their grasp? The diner buzzed with a nervous energy that felt almost electric. As conversations deepened, Sarah could sense an undercurrent of fear intertwined with determination. She glanced at Jason, who was deep in discussion with the others, but his brow was furrowed, and worry tugged at the corners of his mouth. He knew they were standing on the edge of something monumental, but the abyss below was daunting. "Sarah!" A voice called, jolting her from her thoughts. It was Mrs. Thompson, the elderly woman she had seen earlier, clutching her husband's hand. "We need to share our stories. Each of us has something to say, something that will resonate. That's how we can rally more supporters." "Everyone has a voice," Sarah replied, nodding. "Let us not just focus on what's at stake, but on why this matters. Our history, our community, it's all connected." The idea ignited a spark, a flicker of hope. As Mrs. Thompson smiled, others began to chime in, recounting tales of how the corporation's actions had threatened their businesses, their homes, their very lives. A young woman stood, her voice trembling at first. "They wanted to tear down my childhood home. It's all I have left of my parents." Her eyes shone with unshed tears, but something stronger shined through them: resolve. With each story shared, the atmosphere in the diner transformed. Sarah felt the weight of fear lighten. They were telling the truth, their truth, and that made them powerful. More voices rose, some cracking with emotion, others firm with anger. They weren't just individuals floating in a sea of corporate greed. They were a community with a shared history and a reason to fight. Suddenly, the clatter of a glass hitting the floor rang out, silencing the room. Everyone turned to see a newcomer striding through the door, a tall figure draped in a sharp suit, a local news reporter, echoing the aura of the adversary they faced. Sarah's heart raced. This could either be an opportunity or a setback. Are you all really prepared to take on the board? The reporter asked, her eyes scanning the crowd, challenging them. What do you hope to achieve through all this noise? Jason stepped forward, clearing his throat. This isn't just noise. This is our heart speaking. We have stories. We have lives at stake, and we're ready to fight for them. He gestured to the crowd, standing tall, embodying the rallying spirit they had all been cultivating. The reporter's brow lifted, intrigued. Tell me more. People want to hear real stories. Raw emotion sells valuable airtime. In that moment, Sarah felt the urge to step up. It's not about selling airtime, she said, her voice steady. It's about showing the world who we truly are. We're more than just numbers or voters. We're families, friends, a community rooted in love and hope. The reporter nodded thoughtfully, enveloped by the weight of her words. Sarah could see the flicker of something in the journalist's eyes. Maybe it was respect, or perhaps it was curiosity. As they continued to share their stories, a sense of hope blossomed in Sarah's chest. This could be the turning point they were looking for. If the world outside their town could hear their fight, they might stand a chance. But lingering in the back of her thoughts was that gnawing doubt. Would sharing their truth be enough? When the meeting finally disbanded, the sense of unity lingered like an echo. Sarah and Jason exchanged encouraging glances, a silent agreement passing between them. But as they stepped outside into the cool night air, a dark cloud loomed overhead. The board wouldn't take their uprising lightly. What constraints would they face, and how would they respond to this newfound visibility? Returning home later, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching them even after the meeting. What would be the board's next move? The fight was just beginning, and danger loomed closer than ever. Her heart raced with anticipation as she realized that soon enough they would face the real test of their courage. Would their stories ignite a movement, or would it lead them into greater peril? Only time would tell, and wrapped in the cloak of uncertainty, Sarah felt the stirrings of resolve begin to take form. The night enveloped Sarah like a heavy blanket, smothering her with worries she couldn't shake off. As she walked up the driveway, shadows danced in the flickering porch light. She hesitated, recalling the faces of her neighbors, people she had laughed with, cried with, people whose lives were now entwined with this daunting battle. It was more than just a fight for homes. It was a fight for their very identities. Once inside, she leaned against the door, the weight of her resolve mixed with doubt. Moments from the diner echoed in her mind the stories, the bravery. Yet, the chill from the looming specter of the board left a bitter taste in her mouth. Would they retaliate? What tactics would they employ to suppress this rising wave of unity? As she moved through the house, Sarah found her mother in the living room, flipping through old photo albums. Every turn of the page revealed stories of their family, a montage of lives lived in joy and sorrow, a history she cherished deeply. Sarah plopped down on the couch beside her mom and sighed heavily. "Mom, do you think we can actually win?" she asked, fear threading through her voice. Her mother looked up, eyes illuminated by the warm glow of the lampshade. "Winning isn't just about what happens at the end, sweetheart. It's about standing up for what you believe in, feeling the strength in your community." Her mother's words comforted Sarah, but what lay ahead still felt terrifying. The stories of those in the diner had painted a picture of resilience, but the corporate machine they were facing seemed relentless and cold. Later that night, unable to sleep, Sarah grabbed her phone. She flipped through social media, finding snippets of news about local protests in other towns, similar challenges unfolding. She scrolled past headlines about grassroots movements gaining traction. Hope flickered faintly in her heart. What if they could spark something bigger? What if their fight could inspire others? Without thinking, she hit the share button, spreading the spirit of their rallying call. It felt like a small spark in the vast darkness, but perhaps it was enough to ignite a fire. Around the same time, Jason stood outside his home, the wind stirring the leaves into a soft rustle. He replayed the events of the diner, clutching a crumpled flyer that promoted their next meeting. He felt a fire growing within him, the determination of the crowd pushing him forward. What if their collective fears turned into fuel for their cause? He took a deep breath, his mind racing with ideas on how to organize the community further, to make their battle unignorable. Meanwhile, there was a knock at the Thompson-S door. Mrs. Thompson opened it to find two members of the local board, their expressions draped in insincerity. "We need to discuss your little gathering," one said, feigning a smile that failed to mask the underlying threat. A chill swept through the air that night, hinting at the storm ahead. Back in her room, Sarah made a list of actions. They'd need to rally more voices. Each story they shared could resonate outside their little town. They had to be strategic, showing that they were calm but resolute. Ideas for fundraising events, community gatherings, and ways to connect with the press swirled in her mind. But then a thought pierced her cloud of hope. What would happen if the board retaliated? Would their efforts awaken a sleeping giant ready to crush them? Outside, the wind howled softly, a whisper of uncertainty mingling with their quiet resolve. The fight wasn't just for their homes. It was for their future. As dawn threatened to break, Sarah clutched the list tightly in her hands, feeling the weight of their mission settle firmly on her shoulders. Tomorrow they would need to present a united front to prepare for whatever challenges the board might throw their way. As her eyelids grew heavy, one thought lingered in her mind. Would their fight rally others to stir a movement beyond their community? The dawn would bring clarity. Yet, inside her, the flames of determination burned brighter than ever. Would it be enough to keep them safe? Would they truly band together against the looming pressure, or would fear break them apart? Time was running out. As the first light crept through Sarah's bedroom window, she was jolted awake by the chirping of birds, their songs almost a taunt to the brewing storm ahead. The sun filtered through the curtains, illuminating the list she had made the night before. Each action item seemed to demand her attention, pulling her from the comfort of sleep into the harsh reality that awaited her outside. She dressed quickly, ignoring the fleeting whispers of doubt still clinging to her spirit. Today, they would gather at the park, a space once used for laughter and picnics, now set to become a battlefield for their homes. She could feel a rising tide of urgency in her veins, an unwavering belief that today was a pivotal day. As she stepped outside, the air felt crisp with anticipation. Neighbors were already gathering, some clutching coffee cups, while others exchanged words laced with both anxiety and determination. Their faces, a mix of familiar joy and solemn resolve, reflected the weight of the challenge ahead. It was hard not to feel overwhelmed, yet Sarah's heart hammered with hope. This was not just her fight. It was theirs. Jason arrived, his eyes alight with a fierce intensity. "We can't back down. Today's the day we put our feet down and say enough is enough," he declared, rallying a small cluster nearby. His energy was infectious, and without hesitation, Sarah joined him, her own worries melting away in the face of collective strength. As the crowd swelled, Sarah caught glimpses of stories woven into each face, stories that begged to be heard. Mrs. Thompson smiled reassuringly, while the Morales family stood close, their tight grip on one another a testament to a shared spirit. Sarah felt a swell of emotion. Each person here represented more than just a name. They were lives intertwined with hope and history. Jason stepped forward to address the group, his voice rising above the murmurs. "We may be small, but we carry the weight of our homes, our families, our dreams. If we stand together, they can't ignore us." His words ignited a ripple of energy, fists raised, voices chanting in unison. But as excitement buzzed in the air, a shadow loomed over them. A black SUV pulled up abruptly, its engine growling like a beast ready to attack. The sight sent a shiver through the crowd. From the car emerged two rigid figures dressed sharply in suits, the board members they had dreaded. The crowd fell silent, tension swelling like a balloon ready to burst. One of the men stepped forward, a thin smirk plastered on his face. "Good morning, everyone. Seems you've all gathered for a little reunion." What a lovely display of community spirit, he started, his tone dripping with insincerity. "What do you want?" Sarah spoke out, her voice steady despite the thrum of fear in her chest. She could feel all eyes on her, the weight of expectation pressing down. The man raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering through his demeanor. Let us just say I'm here to remind you that your unity could have dire consequences. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, a palpable shift from optimism to uncertainty. You think you can scare us? Jason shot back, stepping beside Sarah. We will not be intimidated by your threats. The board member chuckled lightly. Oh, we wouldn't dream of it. Just consider this a friendly reminder. We have resources and connections you can't even imagine. The fight you're picking might not end the way you hope. Sarah's heart raced. Did they really intend to crush the spirit of their community? Fear threatened to cloud the hope building inside her. But as she glanced at her neighbors, she saw the flames of resilience flickering in their eyes. Sarah took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was their home, their lives at stake. Together, we'll show you what we can do, Sarah declared, her voice stronger than she felt. The crowd started murmuring in agreement, the collective chant building again. And just like that, Sarah knew this was truly only the beginning. The storm would come, but she felt ready to weather whatever awaited them. But what if? Their courage only angered the board further? What if the true fight was yet to come? The moment hung heavy in the air, each breath echoing the tension that clung to Sarah's chest. She could feel the pulse of her neighbor's fears, each heart beating in time with her own. They had gathered for this moment, united in purpose, but the board's presence was like a dark cloud overhead, threatening to burst. Jason clenched his fists, his jaw set in defiance. We want T back down, he repeated, louder this time, his voice a battle cry. The board member smirked, clearly unfazed. Do you really think you can win this? You're playing a game with rules you don't even know exist. Maybe it's time we rewrite the rules, Sarah said, stepping forward, emboldened by Jason's strength and the support of her neighbors. The crowd roared in response, their voices a wave crashing against the threat looming before them. But deep down, she knew this wasn't just about the land being taken. It was about identity, belonging, and the history entrenched in every corner of their community. This was their place, a sanctuary of joy, of memories, and of love. They couldn't let it vanish without a fight. The board member, appearing more sinister by the second, continued, we have a plan, and it's moving forward. Your voices will fade, and this park will serve a greater purpose. His words stung, and Sarah's heart sank. What did they mean by a greater purpose? She stiffened, resisting the despair creeping in. Not if we have anything to say about it, Jason countered, glancing at Sarah, an unspoken question in his eyes. Are you with me? With a nod from Sarah, he stepped back, leaving her to carry the words of hope he had ignited among the crowd. We are more than just a name on a piece of paper. We are a community filled with life and spirit. You underestimate us, and we will show you what that spirit can do. The crowd's energy surged again, voices mingling with desperation and passion, rising in defiance of the bleak statements from aboard. They began chanting, a sound that reverberated through the park like the roar of a rallying army. But as Sarah chanted, a sense of foreboding settled over her. Was this really enough? The battle was starting, but did they have what it took to sustain their fight? She could see doubt starting to flicker in the faces around her, along with their determination. Sarah, Mrs. Thompson called, breaking Sarah's chain of thoughts. The older woman, usually so reliable and steady, now looked small and terrified. What if they try to push us out? I don't think I can lose my home. Not again. The weight of her words crushed down on Sarah. Mrs. Thompson's family had been among the first to occupy their home in this neighborhood. Decades of memories etched into every brick. Could they really stand against the powerful forces looming over them? I promise, we'll fight together, Sarah assured, her voice heavy with sincerity, meeting Mrs. Thompson's trembling hands with her own. We want to let go of what we've built. But deep inside, a chilling question hung in the air. How far would the board go to crush them? As the board members exchanged glances, the faint glimmer of hesitation on their faces offered a flicker of potential. Perhaps they weren't as invincible as they appeared. Then, a murmur swept through the crowd, bringing Sarah back to the present. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing toward the main street leading into the park that a crowd of supporters arrived, bearing homemade signs, slogans painted with bold optimism, standing for their cause. The sound of their presence filled the park on the heels of hope, igniting a renewed spirit among Sarah's friends and neighbors. Was this the turning point they needed? As Sarah locked eyes with Jason, determination etched into their expressions, she realized this was no longer just their fight. It was becoming a movement, a clarion call for all those who had been slowly silenced. But as the crowd cheered around her, Sarah couldn't help but feel a rising swell of anxiety beneath the celebration. What sacrifices lay ahead? The moment of truth was drawing near, and Sarah felt the weight of her community's future on her shoulders, heavy yet electrifying. Would their unity be enough to hold back the storm that threatened to engulf them? The air vibrated with renewed energy as the new supporters poured in, their enthusiasm contagious. Sarah felt a wave of hope crash against her fears, though she knew this was just the beginning of what could be a long, arduous journey. With each cheer from the crowd, Sarah saw the faces of her neighbors brighten. Mrs. Thompson's trembling hands steadied, and a small smile cracked through her worry. There was strength in numbers, and right now they had that in abundance. But Sarah couldn't ignore the shadows that lingered at the edges of her thoughts. The board might have underestimated the community's spirit, but how far would their greed reach? As the chants grew louder, Sarah raised her own voice. "This park belongs to us. It's the heart of our neighborhood. We will not let it be snatched away." The crowd responded, repeating her words like an echo. It was powerful, almost electric. But Sarah knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to stop the board from proceeding with their plans. There was a fight brewing, but they needed more than passion. They needed a strategy. "Jason," she called, straining to be heard over the noise. He turned, his eyes bright with purpose. "We need to organize. We can't just be voices in the wind. Let's draw up a plan, maybe even consider legal action. There has to be something we can do." Jason nodded, realizing the weight of their endeavor. Their voices alone couldn't build a fortress against the board's resources. As they began discussing strategy amid the energetic chants, Sarah felt a spark of purpose ignite within her. She would not be just a whisper in the crowd. She was going to become a leader. Suddenly, a woman towards the back of the gathering caught Sarah's attention. With wild, braided hair and fierce eyes, the woman held a sign that read, "Our community, our rules." Sarah recognized her from a local activism group. As the crowd chanted, she made her way forward. "Sarah," the woman called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "You need to focus on gathering support beyond this park. There are allies in the city council ready to listen, but you need to reach them before it's too late. Can we really do that?" Sarah's heart raced. What if they could turn the tide? The woman locked eyes with her, a fire igniting in her gaze. "We can if we act fast. They'll try to dismiss you, but you have momentum right now. Don't lose it." Just then, the board member's smirk faded as he realized the unified presence growing around them. He stepped forward again, this time with a sense of urgency. "You think this is just about the land? You're making a grave mistake, meddling in affairs you don't understand. Or perhaps we're about to shine a light on your greed." Sarah retorted, a newfound boldness taking hold of her. The board member's eyes narrowed, a warning like thunder rumbling in the distance. A silent exchange rippled through the ranks of their opponents as intimidation hung in the air. But it only fueled Sarah's resolve. And just as the sun dipped lower in the sky, splashing the park with vivid oranges and reds, a call echoed through the crowd. "Let us head to City Hall." A wave of cheers rose up, their momentum solidifying into a march. As they began to move, Sarah felt the fire of her community at her back. Each step was an affirmation of their resolve. Could they turn this moment into the change they desperately needed? The questions loomed ahead, but she felt her heart quicken with the possibilities. Sometimes it took one step into the unknown to transform fear into strength. And as they marched, the shadows of doubt mingled with hope, creating a landscape of uncertainty. What awaited them at City Hall, a chance or a challenge? As they approached the imposing structure, the air was thick with anticipation. Little did they know, the confrontation at the heart of the city would lead to revelations none of them were prepared for. Would their fight be about preserving a park or unraveling something much deeper? As they reached City Hall, the atmosphere shifted. The vast stone facade loomed before them, a symbol of authority and bureaucracy. Nervous energy crackled through the group. This was the moment they had fought so hard for. Sarah could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing in the silence that fell over the crowd as they stood at the entrance. "Stay close," Jason whispered as they stepped forward, taking in the grandeur of the building. All around, voices murmured, sharing stories and plans. But everyone's focus was on Sarah, and she felt the weight of their expectations heavy on her shoulders as they moved inside. The long hallway felt like stepping into a different world. The walls were lined with portraits of past leaders, staring down at them with judgmental eyes. Here, decisions were made that could change lives, and Sarah knew they were about to make their voices heard. A receptionist behind a glass barrier glanced at them, her expression unreadable. "What can I help you with today?" she asked, the monotone of her voice a stark contrast to the passion of the march outside. Sarah stepped forward and summoned all her courage. "We're here to speak about the board's south plans for the park," she stated, her voice steadier than she felt. The receptionist blinked slowly. "You'll need an appointment," she replied, barely looking up from her desk. Frustration bubbled up in Sarah. "We don't have time for appointments. The community is here, and we demand to be heard." Jason placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Let us take a breath. Maybe we can ask for a representative to come speak with us?" Just then, the fierce woman from the protest, whom Sarah now knew as Lila, joined them. "That's right. This is our chance to show them how serious we are." She turned towards the crowd behind them. "Let's not back down now. They can't ignore us when we stand together." With renewed determination, Sarah turned back to the receptionist. "Please, we need someone to talk to us. We can't let our voices be silenced. The future of our community depends on this park." As the receptionist weighed her options, a door on the side swung open. A woman stepped out, sharp and polished, her demeanor commanding. She looked at the crowd gathered in the hallway, annoyance flickering across her face. "What is all this noise about?" Before anyone could respond, Lila stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "We're not backing down. Our park is not just land. You've got to understand what it means to us." The board member from earlier had followed them, taking a position at the back. Sarah noticed him pull out his phone, an unsettling glint in his eye as he observed the growing crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," the woman began, her voice a mix of cold calculation and curiosity, "I suggest you articulate your concerns quietly. We have procedures for these matters." But the crowd erupted with anger, a wave of voices rising in protest. Their collective fury felt like the roar of thunder, shaking the very foundation of the city hall. Sarah's heart soared. This was unity. Suddenly, a familiar face slipped through the door beside the official. It was Mrs. Thompson, eyes filled with urgency. "Wait, you all need to hear this. There is something you won't believe about the board's plans." Her voice quivered but held a certain strength that caught everyone's attention. The crowd quieted, the suspense palpable. As Sarah locked eyes with Mrs. Thompson, she felt a mixture of dread and hope. What would this revelation lead to? Would it change everything they were fighting for? "Tell us what you know," Sarah urged, her voice shaking with anticipation. Mrs. Thompson took a deep breath, poised to unravel the very threads of their fight. What could she possibly reveal that might alter the course of their destiny? Mrs. Thompson took a moment to gather her thoughts, her hands trembling slightly as she stepped into the spotlight. "I've been doing some digging," she said, her voice steadying as confidence built. "The board isn't just planning to take our park. They're also looking at contracts with a development firm to turn it into corporate offices. They want to erase our history and fill their pockets with profits." Gasps swept through the crowd like wildfire, disbelief and anger flashing on every face. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" a neighbor shouted, his fists clenching in anger. "This changes everything." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes darting across the sea of supporters. "I didn't know if I could find proof, and I wanted to be sure before we risked everything." Jason stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through him. "So it's not just about the land anymore. They want to erase our community." "Exactly," she affirmed, determination flashing in her eyes. "But we can't let that happen. We have the power now to fight back." Sarah's heart raced. She felt the heavy weight of her mother's teachings wrap around her like armor about standing for what was right, about never losing hope. "So what can we do?" someone asked. "We need to gather evidence, organize petitions, and reach out to news outlets. Let us shine a light on what they're really doing." Lila chimed in enthusiastically, rallying the crowd. Each word poured fuel on their growing fire. The atmosphere shifted from anger to action as a chorus of agreement surged from the people. "Yes, we can't let them undo what we built." In that moment, defiance was their gift, showing that fear had failed to extinguish the light of unity. Jason turned to Sarah, excitement racing in his eyes. "Let's make a plan, then. We need to form committees," he said, his voice ringing with leadership. A roar erupted from the crowd as people began to discuss, voices rising like a tide of determination. Sarah felt the walls of City Hall tremble as the passion of the community echoed through its halls. But the board member stepped closer, disbelief etched on his face. "Do you really think any of this will matter? You're speaking to walls. We have the law on our side." His words hung ominously in the air, threatening to drown their spirit. Yet amid the growing anxiety, a sense of purpose glimmered. Sarah took a deep breath, heart racing. "We may not have the law right now, but we have something far stronger: our voices. We demand our right to be heard." Jason urged, galvanizing their fervor. "Let's take it to the press," Lila urged. "This is a story that needs to go beyond these walls." The board member sneered, but deep down, Sarah sensed fear. Perhaps they had underestimated them. That moment, a local news anchor entered, drawn in by the commotion. "What's happening here?" she asked, capturing the scene unfolding in front of her camera. "There is corruption at play, and the community is rising together to reclaim what is rightfully ours," Lila exclaimed passionately. The news anchor raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You mean there is a development plan that threatens the community's park?" "Yes. We need your help. We need a voice," Mrs. Thompson cried, her heart shining through her clear resolve. The news anchor's face lit up, sensing the pulse of the crowd. "This could be a powerful story. I'd love to hear more." And just like that, a glimmer of hope emerged. With every second that passed, the community felt stronger, united against the tide of greed. As they continued to share their plans with the newsroom, laughter and determination spread among the crowd, igniting a whirlwind of ideas. They devised petitions, powered by the momentum they had built together. This was their moment to rise, defying the silencing powers of the board, refusing to back down. Their stories would matter. The sun dipped lower, bathing the hall in golden hues, a symbol of new beginnings. But even amid euphoria, Sarah understood that this was just the first chapter of their battle. The fight would require sacrifice. Fear still lurked in the corners, but she wouldn't let it drown her spirit. As laughter rang out among friends turned comrades, Sarah reached for Jason's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Whatever they throw at us, we'll face it together," she vowed. "Together," he echoed, radiant determination illuminating his eyes, and with hearts full of courage and community woven through the very fabric of their being, they all stepped into a storm. The conflict was far from over, but they had ignited a fire that couldn't be easily snuffed out. Together, they would create a future where their voices would be heard. The road ahead was uncertain, yet hope blazed brightly, interwoven with the spirit of each person standing strong in solidarity. As the dark clouds of greed loomed above, they readied themselves, prepared to shine a light into the shadows, fighting not just for a park, but for their very essence and heartbeat as a community. This was it. The call to action. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep inspiring you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others hear this life-saving message. Comment below with your thoughts and emotions about this transforming ending. And don't wait, not even one more second, to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this spark of hope.